You're listening to the Joe Kamo Show. Real sports, real talk.
Micheal Risher, what's happening, man?
How you doing? It's good to be here.
Welcome to the show, man. The Joe Kamo Show, which will actually also be broadcast on the Fantasy Football Counselor Show. Excited to have you on, man. We're talking sports injuries. We're talking everything here with you. You've got probably one of, if not the coolest jobs on the planet. You work with professional athletes. Well, why don't you describe what you do? Because I just find it fascinating. And the point of this show is to bring on not only athletes, but people that are in the sports industry or people that are doctors, but you've got the coolest job. So I think this is going to be a really cool chat. Can you let us know what you do?
Yeah. So I'm a sports chiropractor, and basically I own the rehab lab. It's a facility in Chicago, and where I treat lots of athletes. But basically what I do is I've been traveling around the country this season, working on different players from different teams, helping them recover from injuries. Helped a lot of guys this off season, and really what I want to be and what I believe I am is just a premier sports performance doctor. So I have a history in strength training. I was a sports performance trainer, trained a bunch of guys for their combines, guys like DeMarcus Robinson. I don't know if you played Troy Maine Pope in fantasy football at all this week, but there's a handful of guys, CJ Procise, a handful of guys that are around the league that I helped train for their combines and pro days. And so that's my background. And so I took all of that into chiropractic with me. And so now I have the training and the rehab and the soft tissue. And I kind of put it all together to help people not only recover from injuries, but stay healthy and stay injury free the rest of the season. So, so that's kind of what I've been doing this season. I have, 16 different players on 6 different NFL teams. I have 2 NBA players and 1 MLB player, and then a handful of other sports. So it's a really fun job. I love my job. I love going to work every day.
Yeah, so I encourage everybody right now, as we're going through the podcast, if you're driving, pull over, check out his Instagram. So we talked about this before the show. I mean, your name is so long here, it's hard to find you. I think so. But anyway, Dr.Micheal.Tal and then Risher, R-I, like Fisher, but with an R, R-I-S-H-E-R, Dr. Rish. I think we should condense this, Doc, because again, Dr. Micheal Risher, it sounds like a documentary of a great movie,
true.
An epic movie, doesn't it? The story of Dr. Micheal Risher starts with, anyway, but this is really cool because I'm on his Instagram now. And again, there's a couple athletes that he posts. We're not going to go into what type of injuries he's healing for these guys. We don't really care. What we care about is the cool factor of like who he's dealing with. So I see you're working on Joe Mixon in one picture. I see Allen Robinson. I see Josh Norman. I see David Montgomery. There's a lot of cool athletes. So like, how do they build relationships? How do they say, okay, I'm going to work with Dr. Micheal Risher? How do you have that in with these athletes? How did it start with them?
Yeah. So it was kind of weird how it started. And David Montgomery walked into a gym that I was working at, and really nobody knew who he was in the facility, which was super weird to me. And he walked in and everyone kind of knew that he was on the Bears, but nobody really knew who he was. And I knew instantly who he was, being a Bears fan. And told the trainers, and I helped with his training. So I didn't really treat him very much. It was assisting in his training, assisting in his off-season training, telling his trainers what I noticed from a biomechanic standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, just knowing who he is as an athlete and helping him train this off-season. So that was kind of the first thing. And then from there, it's been a lot of social media. When you have your social media to the place where I kind of built it up when I was in school and wanted that to be a big marketing piece and for athletes to see what I do, it's kind of like my resume. And so some guys saw me on there and hit me up, other guys I would reach out to. And then what really happened was I got in front of people. As soon as you can get your hands on someone, as soon as you can actually show them what you do, that's the real game changer. So this past summer, this off season, I was out at the field with a bunch of the Bears players during throwing sessions that they were holding during the quarantine. So they were all training together, And basically I'm in front of them every day, snapping to Mitch Trubisky and playing catch with them and just kind of working on them in a general sense, not really treatment, but helping them warm up before their field sessions. You get hands-on guys and you kind of show them what you have to offer and talk shop with them a little bit, tell them that you understand how they move as an athlete. You understand what their potential pain may be coming from and how you can fix it. And they buy in, because at the end of the day, these guys, their body is their job, right? And if their body isn't working at 100%, if someone comes in and says, my hip's hurting, I can't run XYZ route, I can't do XYZ thing on the field, that's their livelihood. That's years off of their career if they can't produce at a high level, if they're injured. So, and that's exactly what I do, is I help them recover and I help them stay healthy. And you've heard it said before, the best ability is availability. And that's really what I try to offer these guys is availability on the field for their team. When you have someone that's healthy, I have things that I do to help them improve on the margins, help these elite athletes become even more elite.
So that's really cool. So it's a combination of social proof. They're seeing other athletes are seeing it on social media. You worked with this athlete, and then it's word of mouth, and it just starts snowballing from there. I'm doing the complete opposite. I'm burning bridges. I tell these players they suck for fantasy football, and they're coming on my social media and saying they want to box me or I want to box them. So I'm doing the complete opposite of what you're doing. So you're building friendships. I'm burning bridges. It's great. It's actually kind of entertaining. Either way, we've got the attention of these athletes one way or another. So
yeah, exactly.
It's actually funny. So more towards the end of the show, guys, stay tuned. I want to talk a little bit about health and fitness, because I think that, like, I don't have $1 million budget like LeBron to take care of my body, right? I don't have that type of budget. So can you maybe later on give us a little bit of a watered down version of what we can do as average people? Because I think a lot of people, average people like myself that don't have $1 million, $2 million, $3 million salary, can't invest in guys like you. What can we do to ourselves? So I want to talk about that in a second. Remind me if I forget. Yeah. Going back to the athletes again, the cool factor of it. So you're hanging out with these athletes. I see that you're in David Montgomery's house, all this stuff. What type of, and we don't have to name names here, but what type of conversations are you having? Is it strict? Are these guys cool guys for the most part? Do you find, and again, not naming names, do you find some arrogance with guys? Are they more down to earth? Do they treat you like, because I've hung out with some athletes and stuff like that. They're just normal people, but somehow fans think that these guys have like some sort of superpower. I mean, obviously ability they are, but what is it? What kind of conversations do you have? Is it cool? Is it chill with these guys? How do they treat you? Can you give us a general vibe of how it is?
Yeah. I mean, I love all of my patients. Every single guy that I've worked with to a person is incredibly cool. And just like you said, really down to earth. And when you get to treat, and especially me with being a doctor, that breaks down a lot of barriers, because all of a sudden they're trusting their health in my hands. And so when they see that I'm taking care of them, when they see that I just truly care about them, like I don't care about anything else, I truly just care about them, that breaks down a lot of barriers. And so you talk about them, you talk about if they got a game coming up, you can talk about the game or things that they like or don't like about their game or how they played, or and then sometimes you get into family, sometimes you get into how they got where they are and different places they lived and interests. So it really kind of depends on the person, what we talk about. It really kind of depends on the person, how in depth that you get. But I mean, to a person, everyone's really, really cool. Their only concern is, hey, you're helping me and you truly care about me. And when they can see that conversation is just really fun to have. And so, yeah, everybody's been really, really awesome. And a lot of the guys, I'll actually go and stay with them, or do in-home treatment. So that breaks down even more barriers, and the conversations that you can have, the things you can get to know. It's really cool building relationships in that way as well.
So like for fantasy purposes, I'll go back to fantasy football. Let's just say player X has a hamstring injury. The coaches say that this guy is going to be active today. Do you know, let's say if you're working with that player, would you kind of know if that player is 100% or limited? Do you have that type of information?
Yeah, I'll definitely know kind of where they're at, because all my guys I keep in touch and just kind of monitor, see how they're doing, because I genuinely just care about them as people. And so I keep in touch. And so I kind of know generally where people are at. I don't really, I mean, I'm not allowed to share that with because of the health information protection laws. Yeah. But from a general sense, I could kind of spitball where they might be. And then even knowing, like just talking to guys, knowing how training rooms are across the league, I can pretty much tell you if someone gets injured, is it going to be an easy recovery or is it going to be a little bit harder because they're training staff? So just kind of understanding how things operate across the league, because I have friends that are docs for guys all across the league. I have the Saints, the Browns, guys in Miami, guys in California, guys in Washington. So all across the league, we kind of talk and say, hey, how's the training staff look here? What are areas that guys complain about? And just in a general sense, not sharing any specific injuries, but like, what is the general sentiment about how their care is? Do they feel comfortable with just their training room, or do they feel like they need more on top of that? And it kind of varies person to person and team to team.
Interesting. So I wanted to ask you, like, okay, so you're working out with these guys. Is there any injuries that you come across where like, okay, you know what, I need some extra help in fixing this? Or are you well-versed in pretty much all aspects of sports injuries from MCL to ACL? Obviously they're gonna need surgeries. I don't think, from my understanding, you don't perform surgeries, but is there any challenges? And again, not to name a certain player, but is there any challenges that you've come across? Oh, damn, that's kind of out of my comfort zone.
I wouldn't say necessarily out of my comfort zone. There are a lot of, so I'm an eternal optimist. I am incredibly optimistic about all injuries. So I know that regardless what the injury is, I can help them some point along the road, whether that's me saying, hey, this is the treatment you need to get in the facility because I don't have access to it, or doing part of the rehab. It just depends on where I fit in the in the grand scheme of things. So if someone comes in and they have a ligament injury, I'm not going to have the tools to help that ligament heal faster. That ligament's going to heal on its own. But what I can do is help them with movement patterns, help them strengthen the muscles that need to be strengthened to prevent that injury from happening again, to get them back on the field faster. So with a lot of the ligament and with a lot of the tissue injuries, the tissue is going to heal as fast as it's going to heal. But I can be there to do my best with the rehab exercises to speed it up, do my best with the rehab to speed it up. But then the big piece where I feel like my value is preventing that from happening again. You see a lot of the recurrent hamstring injuries. I feel like if you do rehab the right way, you can prevent a lot of those re-injuries from happening. You see a lot of these hamstring injuries leading to ACL injuries, all sorts of stuff. You can stop the sequela of injuries down the road if you do a good job treating the injury as it exists now.
Wow, that's crazy. So I want to ask you, I'll give you a practical application here. So I had I thought it was a sciatica. Turns out I had an MRI done after like 6 months of pain because I couldn't stand for long periods of time because how I did, I guess it was a ballistic movement of lifting I think it was like a tire, and I kept lifting. I thought I was stronger than I was. And I think it was like a disc bulge in the back of my back. Mm-hmm. So again, like an injury like that lasted for me for like a year because again, I didn't get surgery. I didn't probably get the right information. I went to a physiotherapist. They didn't give me good advice. Went to a personal trainer. He finally gave me some core strengthening exercise, but then it took like 6 months and I still have it come back here and there. So let's say I'm a professional athlete and I have this problem, which took an average guy like me 6 to 8 months to a year to heal. Now I come to you with this problem. My back's hurting. It hurts for me to stand. You notice that it's a disc, but what are the steps? Okay, I got this pain. I can't stand. Is it an immediate MRI and then immediate treatment? Because you can't afford to have a player stay out a year. Like there's no way I could have played football, even if I was in good shape with this type of pain. So how does that work? I got a disc bulge. I'm in pain. I can't stand. What do you do to me now? Like, because how do we speed up this process instead of taking a year and a half to fix?
Right. So, I mean, the first thing with these guys is imaging is instant. Like as soon as there's an injury, they have X-ray, CT, MRI. If they think it's a small fracture, they immediately go to CT. And so that's like, they immediately go to the most information they can gather. So if you were an NFL guy, you would have had an MRI day of, right?
Not 6 months later.
Exactly. Your back starts hurting. They're like, all right, let's get an X-ray. Let's get an MRI immediately so we know what's going on.
Okay.
For me, treating that, the actual MRI X-ray doesn't change a ton unless there's a broken bone. As far as treating disc bulges, all that stuff, the MRI only tells me, is there damage that I can't fix? Is there damage that I can't find the way to treat? So with your disc bulge, that's actually a fairly simple one. You find that you have these things called directional preferences, and I do that with, it's pretty much every joint. If someone comes in with an MCL, a PCL, a foot, an ankle, a shoulder, like literally any joint in your body, you can find the direction that you need to do the exercise. You can find the direction you need to do the joint mobilization, and that directs the treatment. So for you come into the clinic, and I see those all the time. That's some outside of the athletes, that's one of the most common injuries. And we usually get people pain-free in about a month and a half, maybe 2. And then from there, it's just stabilization. It's really pretty simple and straightforward treating those types of things. And we have really great success. But as far as you go, as far as it goes for you, and if you were an NFL athlete, we would have had you back on the field relatively quickly, because they would have given you anti-inflammatories. They would have given you steroid injections to help with the nerve pain. But you also have a goal like, hey, I have to be back by this date because my livelihood depends on it. For you, I mean, you suffer because it's painful, but it's not like your livelihood is in jeopardy. So you can kind of try and tough it out, try a couple different things. For these guys, if they have something, the team's throwing every tool they have at it, and they're seeking outside help from people like me potentially.
Yeah, so I'm curious here. Let's debunk the myth here. I want to talk about injury-prone players. I want to talk about this. So let's say, we're not going to name names, but let's say player A. We're going to call this player A. So player A comes in. He's got a hamstring injury, and it lingers. He comes back a little prematurely into the season, gets injured again. Next year, he's got a torn ACL. Next year, it's groin injuries and other things, stuff like that. So you're kind of treating this guy. You're saying, okay, is this guy really injury-prone? Is it like, I know there's different variables. I get it. But let's just say that, there's certain players that we see in their careers that just kind of just get injured. Do you think, in your opinion, is it just a fluke injury? Like, sometimes it is, and I understand, but do you think there is some underlining either medical issues or the fact that they're just maybe not as conditioned as, let's say, a guy like LeBron James? Is there a chance that they could be not taking the precautions necessary, and that's why this is happening? Or do you think it's completely a fluke? What is kind of your general idea of injury-prone players?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think people can be injury prone. And whether you want to say it, they're injury prone or they're more prone to get injured, whatever, like, it's just semantics at that point, and I don't really care to argue over the semantics. But anytime you have tissue damage, that muscle is likely not as strong and likely not as reactive. There are compensation patterns. There are new movement patterns that you get, and those can be treated. But if they're not treated, then you're more likely to get injured than you were before. If you had a contact injury, contact ACL, right, you're more likely to get injured on that side than you were previously, because now you've had surgery. Now you have scar tissue in there. You have, like, your likelihood of injury goes up with every injury that you have. If your muscle is not reacting, if your muscle is not as strong as it was, then all of a sudden the normal stress that's put on it can damage it even more easily. So I think definitely you can be injury prone. I think that as far as the science goes to prove that, since there are so many variables, you're never going to find a study that says, yes, this was directly caused by this, or you're not going to find any study that says, yes, people are injury prone or people are not injury prone, because in order for a study to say that, you have to, there are just too many variables to analyze. So in my opinion, yes, I've seen people have injuries that affect their entire fascial chain. And so you have a rib injury that leads to a glute injury. You have a foot injury that goes up the chain, and now all of a sudden they don't feel their glute firing, all of this sort of stuff. You can definitely be more prone to injury. And I think there are definitely things that can prevent that. And I try to do a lot of that. And so you see these guys like LeBron James, they take good care of their bodies, but intrinsically they have certain things that they've been born with and they've trained either knowingly or unknowingly, that makes them less prone to injury.
Okay, so what is LeBron doing? Like, I don't want to. I could probably Google what he's doing, but I want to be as good as LeBron is. I'm not going to get his genetics, obviously, but I want LeBron James treatment without spending $1 million. What is he doing that's so? What can you do to the body that costs $1 million a year? Because it makes no sense to me. Okay, let's just say for me, I go get chiro, I'm aligned, great. I eat the right foods, great. I go get massage, great. I get a good gym workout, and I got a good trainer. I'm in good shape. I'm getting massage. I'm getting chiro. I'm getting, what is there that he can do for $1 million that I can't do? Like, what is so special? Why do I need over $1 million to treat my body when I can do my own health and fitness, get a trainer? It may cost me, let's just say $500 a month. Okay. Let's say I max out. I get a trainer. I do all this stuff. I'm at $2,000 a month. It's still not $1 million. What is so special? What is he doing that's worth $1 million?
So for a lot of guys across all leagues, they'll have personal chefs, and that costs anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 a month. And so I think you saw Russell Wilson has like 2 personal chefs. That costs a lot of money. And so all of a sudden you're at whatever, 50 grand a year just on food.
Right.
And so that's a big piece. Now, you don't need that, but if you have a nutritionist that says, hey, you need these, and then you have a personal chef that's making you things in the proper quantity, making sure that your nutrition is on point and tastes delicious, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge piece. Now he's saving time that he can train. He's saving time that he can go see another chiro. He probably gets a massage.
Yeah, exactly. Life, less stress.
Exactly. And so that's a big piece of it, is having the professional chef and the nutritionist decide what your diet's going to be. So that's one of the biggest pieces. The other thing that they'll do is they'll have PT, they'll have chiro, they'll have a trainer probably on retainer. And so they'll either pay for this person to come train them in person or travel with them. Like Luol Deng, do you remember him?
Yeah.
He his personal trainer is one of my good buddies and one of my mentors. And I mean, you pay a lot of money. You pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year training and recovering because your body takes such a beating during your sport and during your off season that you need that. So it adds up quickly because you have people travel with you and because you have multiple people hired to do certain things. So I mean, if you have a chiropractor, a physical therapist, a massage therapist, a trainer, and a chef, that's where it starts to add up. Since exercising isn't your job, you can get all of that stuff done for so inexpensive, and you can get really, really high caliber stuff. You're just going to have to do a little bit more on your own. So if you were to want a phone call with me or want me to program rehab for you, that costs significantly less per month than coming to see me once a week. Right. Because I can take 30 minutes and then you're done for the month, or I can take an hour and then you're programmed for the month. And so it costs significantly less. You can cook your own food and now you don't have to pay a chef, right? You can use these apps and these online resources that are available so that you don't need to hire these people. You don't need to hire someone to program everything out for you. And that's where you start to save money, is you do some research on your own and you take care of it. Little shameless plug here. My buddy Luol Deng's personal trainer. He's trained Olympians. He's trained countless NFL, NBA, Pro Bowlers, All-Stars, you name it. He's forgotten more professional athletes that he's trained than you've ever met in your life. Like that's the sort of guy he is. Right now, his online training is $100 a month, maybe $120 a month. So you can get that caliber of training. You can get the caliber training that NBA All-Stars are getting, that Olympians are getting, but for a fraction of the price. It's a Smart Strength, if you look it up.
Okay, so I'm going to write that down so I can get to train. What is he going to walk me through? Like how to get physically fit and diet?
He writes out all of it. You tell him what your goals are. You tell him what equipment you have access to. And that's how a lot of these trainers online go. You tell them what your goals are, what you have access to, what your training regimen usually is. And they write a custom program for you. So you have every single workout for your entire week written up for you. All you have to do is go to the gym and do it.
Because I want to be strong enough and good cardio enough to box Le'Veon Bell, because me and him went back and forth on Instagram.
I saw that
one. His boxing doesn't look good though. He looks a little clunky. So yeah, he just moves very robotic, anyway, that's besides the fact. Maybe you should train him. But maybe, so if I wanted a training thing and I said, listen, I've got a punching bag, I've got an Airdyne bike here, it's a Rogue Echo bike, I've got a trampoline, I've got some weights, I've got a battle rope, he can work out a workout plan with what I got.
Exactly. And you'll get 4 or 5 workouts a week, and he works with what you have. I mean, it'd be great if you had a barbell and all that, but that's the sort of thing. And their goal is to not only just write the workouts for you, but have you understand why you're doing those workouts as well. So, I mean, Smart Strength is by far the best bang for your buck training wise. I mean, if you want to train like the pros, but not pay $1 million a year, like that's number one for training. You can go see a good chiro. I typically recommend people that are training once a month and get the chiro massage type combo once a month. And that's usually pretty sufficient. So all of a sudden you're talking monthly, $150, $160 just for those two things. Now you just take care of diet on your own, or you hire someone, pay another $100 to have someone walk you through a nutrition program. $250 a month for pretty much the same caliber stuff that these guys are getting. And you're well on your way. You're just not getting the same treatment every single day.
You got to be self-motivated. And that's what I am. We talk about this. I think a lot of people are not as motivated, and I can see why temptation's there, because like I just got a PS5 now, mind you, I do my podcast. I get my workout in, usually 1 to 3 during the day. Once that's done, I feel accomplished. Okay. I got a podcast in, I do some work, make some phone calls, I get a workout in, and then in the evening, I'm either watching Netflix with my wife or now playing PS5. I'm hooked on the new Call of Duty. But yeah, I could see why people would just say, hey, I don't need a workout today. It's just easier to sit on the couch, easier to play the video game. It's easier to do this. I think more people need to be motivated. And that's part of the mission of this show, is try to help with health and fitness and get people into that state, because we're so busy being armchair quarterbacks that, you know, we got to start focusing on ourselves, because again, belly fat starts to come in and metabolism starts to go down after you hit 30. That's what it was for me. It was actually 33. I started a real dip in metabolism, where even though I'm working out where I feel it's pretty intense, whereas I think an average guy who doesn't work out would probably struggle with my workouts. And I feel that I'm strong and I do well, but I still have some excess, you know, belly fat. Is there any tips on that? Because I think that's a common thing. I remember I was in a sales, I used to sell hydraulic cylinders. I went to a sales training. It was a convention for sales hydraulic cylinders, and it was a mining show. And I was observing men there in their 30s and 40s. And I counted, at the time I was in really good shape. I was MMA fighting or training for MMA. I was really lean. I was looking at bodies. Everybody had like a gut. I'm telling you, like 9 out of 10 guys had a gut. Is there any quick tips on, I mean, there's no fix it formula. Is it a combination of diet, working out? What type of intensity level should we be working out? Any advice on how to remove that gut?
Yeah. So the one tricky thing that really isn't understood by the general population, and is done, poor job is done by people that explain it, is you can't do any targeted fat loss. Right. Unfortunately, it'd be awesome if you could say, hey, just want to shred the abs, don't really care about anything else. So there's definitely ways to do it. It's just going to be a body wide thing. So you may notice it in other places. You may notice it in your face, in your legs, in your arms, and not as much in your stomach, because your body's not, you can't just say, hey, I only want to burn this area. Your body's just going to do it throughout your entire body. The big thing that it comes down to, and it's simple, but it's not easy. If you can differentiate between the two, it's calories in versus calories out.
Right.
That's what it boils down to at the end of the day. Now you have certain things in your metabolism, certain hormonal things, certain sleep cycle things. You can get into all the nitty gritty of it all, but what it comes down to at the end of the day is calories in versus calories out. I personally like weight training because your body has a higher metabolism for longer if you add weights in. But doing cardiovascular exercise has its merits and is really good for you as well. So I think a combination of having weights and doing the cardio is your best bet. If you can work out once a day, great. If you can work out twice a day, even better. But it's really It's really how many calories can you burn? And then on the diet side, you have to count your calories, or another thing you can do is count your macros, your macronutrients. That's protein, fat, and carbs, and kind of monitor your caloric intake for the day. And so when you have more calories burned than you have calories consumed, that's where you start to burn the fat. Your body needs that extra that extra energy, and it uses fat as fuel there. So the simplest way you can break it down is calories in versus calories out. Your calories out needs to be higher than your calories in. And that's how you're going to burn the fat. So it's very simple, but it's not an easy thing to do. It's much easier to have that extra donut. It's much easier to skip a workout during the day. And so that's where people run into problems, is they think, oh, I'm eating healthy, but they're eating too much, or they're snacking too much. Actually, the best example I have of this is my parents. They're eating super healthy. They're working out 4 to 5 times a week for 30 minutes to an hour a day, and they're just not losing weight. And I'm like, all right, well, let's look at what you're eating, because there has to be something. You're working out a ton. You're staying active. It's not like you're just sitting on the couch all day. What are you eating that's just adding to your caloric intake? Turns out they're eating almonds as snacks, right? Almonds, healthy, very, very high in fat, very, very high in calories. So if you're having 5, 6, 7 handfuls of almonds a day because you're like, oh, this is a healthy snack, well, all of a sudden your calorie intake is spiked, and it may be healthy, but it's not low calorie. So you kind of have to say, okay, I need to monitor the calories and have healthy food. And so that's kind of the struggle that people have. So that's the best example.
Though. And again, I'm motivated and I want to be in shape, and I'm all about nothing tastes better than being healthy feels. I'm all about that. Trust me. But the thing is, it's like, sometimes I have lunch and it's like, I want a bit of ginger ale to chase down that meal. Or it's Friday night, the kids want to order pizza. Why can't I have it? Or like at night, my wife and I have tea and cake and a couple cookies here and there. And I like that. And sometimes I'm snacking. What do I eat? Like, I want to eat something. I want to snack while I'm watching Netflix. And I don't want just something that's tasteless. So sometimes we'll go with popcorn with a little bit of salt and vinegar on that salt, vinegar, salt stuff. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what's right anymore. All I want to know is, like, how do you get that flavor? Because you can't. Like, there's no way. Because, it sucks. Like, I don't think the trade-off is worth it sometimes. I'm like, I want to eat those chips, and I want to have a piece of chocolate after a meal. That's what I do. I have a sweet tooth and I enjoy it. It's not even a huge piece of chocolate, but it's a little piece of chocolate after a meal. Like, I don't want to have, like, if you you can't maintain a 6-pack if you're doing what I just described I'm doing. You just can't.
Exactly. And there are trade-offs, right? So the method that I like a lot is counting your macros. And so when you count your macronutrients, you're not so much worried about your total calories, right? Because it all adds up in the end. But if you count your protein, your fat, and your carb intake for the day, that kind of tells you where you're at. So if you can have those snacks, right? You can have those chips, you can have the high carb, high fat foods as your snack, and you don't have to sacrifice that there, but you have to say, okay, my meal is not going to contain as many calories. It's not going to contain as much fat. It's not going to contain as many carbs. And I'm going to get my most of my protein intake during my meals and save some of the carbs and the fats for my snacks. And so you can have that trade-off. And that's why I really like counting your macronutrients rather than just your calories, because you can then make that decision like, hey, I want to have this snack and I don't want to sacrifice having these chips while I'm watching Netflix. So I'm going to cut out X part of my meal. I'm going to, instead of having whatever cereal for breakfast, I'm going to have egg whites. That sort of a thing where you trade off, where you're like, I'm going to save these calories. I'm going to save these carbs, these fats for my snack. And then I'm going to have other things to eat during the day. So it's just a trade-off.
It just sucks.
It does suck. It's not easy. It's not easy at all.
And, I don't like, as long as, I don't know, as long as I maintain pretty good, decent physical fitness, I don't need to look like LeBron James. I just I don't care. Like I want to be in good shape. I don't really need a six pack, but it is a trade-off. It's totally like, especially like this wasn't even something to worry about when I was in my 20s because I need to eat whatever the hell I want. But mind you, I was a little more active. But yeah, it's just crazy. And I hate the whole thing. I hate it. Like I hate having to eat egg whites and I hate having to just drink water and not having, a glass of apple juice because there's too much sugar in it. It's crazy. And then you got to watch your gluten and you got to watch this, you got to watch that. Then you got to eat organic. Then there's pesticides. There's just so much. It's like, everything is bad for you. I was just listening to a podcast where they were saying that too much greens are bad for you because they omit stuff that is basically chemicals or whatever they omit that prevents people from taking them out or cutting them. Right. So is too much greens bad? Because I alkalize, I have a green drink in the morning. Is that bad for you? What do you think about green and alkalization? Is that important?
Yeah, I think when you talk about alkaline and trying to lower your pH or change your pH of your body, it fluctuates so slightly that I don't really worry about the acidity or alkalinity of your body. I more care about the micronutrients that you're getting with the green drink. And I think that whole thing, and you can get into talking about free radicals and cancer and combating all these diseases. But when you get to the baseline of it, you're getting all these micronutrients from your green drink. And I think that's awesome. Anytime you can have more colors, people say, eat the rainbow, right? Not Skittles. You want to eat as many different colors as you can throughout the day, because you're getting each of those nutrients has different colors. Each of those different colors comes with these health benefits. And so I don't know that there's necessarily too many greens. I haven't heard that necessarily. But I think when you're looking at all the micronutrients that you're getting from that green drink, that's awesome. It's not necessarily going to help you lose weight unless that's substituting in for a meal or something where that's cutting your calories, but that's super healthy for you. And it is very low calorie. So I think that's a great option.
Yeah, I do that. Now I want to talk a little bit. I want to switch gears here. Mental game. Let's talk about mental game and some of your athletes. Are they really implementing a mental game in their healing and just in general? Is that important? Because we talk all about the physical aspect. How important do you feel mental game is? Because I'm assuming that going back to LeBron James, I'm assuming he's got some sort of like hypnotherapist or something where he's meditating or doing stuff. So how important is mental game? Do your athletes implement mental game? Do you recommend mental game meditation? How important is it?
Yeah. And so that's something that that's not necessarily part of my practice, but I do recommend that visualization. I did that my whole football career. And let me pull something up here. I did that my whole career playing football. I played through college. I was an All-American at the D3 level, played defensive back. And so that whole thing, I fully believe in that. I don't necessarily do that. That's not my strong suit. I don't want to dabble in things that I'm not going to be any good at and waste people's time. I'd rather send them to someone that's going to be an expert in that. But I think that's super important. The thing that I do that I find to be really important is how I speak about players and how I speak to people and having optimism. And this really goes down to what my whole practice is based around. So I have a couple Bible verses. John 5:6-9 is about overcoming doubts in your healing process. And Proverbs 15:30 says, good news brings health to the bones. And Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine. And so I find that the way I speak to athletes and the way that I phrase things and the way that I talk about things, that helps them mentally. That helps them be optimistic and be encouraged. And when you're encouraged and optimistic about your body's healing and your body's performance, that actually, through placebo, that actually will help you perform better. And so while I do recommend people go do the visualization, I love float tanks. I don't know if you've ever done a sensory deprivation tank. I think that's awesome for your mental. That's not my strong suit. And I don't necessarily do that personally. But what I do is I'm very careful with the verbiage that I use. I'm very careful with the words that I use. And I'm very optimistic and encouraging in how I phrase everything. So that way, when someone leaves here, they feel hope, they feel encouraged, they feel excited about what they're about to go do.
Yeah, I heard there's a huge mind-body connection where cancer patients have told, oh, I don't like when doctors say you've got X amount of time to live. That's not up to you. That's in God's hand or whatever you believe in. I totally believe in that. If you believe that you can fight something, you can do it. I totally believe in that. I think there's a huge mind-body connection. Do some of these players come in like, hey, man, like I got a torn ACL, whatever the injury is. Do they come in like, is there like a natural, how do I say this? Are they eager to get back on the field? Is there a sense of urgency is the word I'm trying to find from these players that are injured? Man, you got to get me back in the game. Like, is it that type of mentality?
Absolutely. And I've had people hit me up and say, hey, can you get me back this week? Like, come out and work on me. I want you to get me back for this game. And I go, all right, great. I'll do my best. And you're going to get the best treatment, and you're going to be as ready as you could ever possibly be to play. If we can't do it, then it likely wasn't going to happen anyway, but we're going to do everything we can to get you there. And so yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer in that. The unfortunate thing is the body's going to heal as it's going to heal. I'm not going to be able to completely get rid of certain injuries. I'm not going to be able to fix anything that's torn. If you're too early in the process, I can do everything that's in my power, but I may not get it ready in that week, and so I want to be optimistic, but I also have to be realistic. And so that's why using the research is really good, because now I can say, hey, this is the typical time frame. I think we can get it done in X amount of time. And then guys are optimistic, and every single one of them wants to be on the field. None of them like being off the field. If they're injured, all they can think about is playing again. And they'll do whatever it takes. They'll pay whatever it takes if they can get back faster.
Right. Just a general question here. I know this is a broad question. We talk about players that are phenomenal. George St. Pierre in MMA, Michael Jordan on the field. What is it with these guys? Let's say you're working on, let's say a George St. Pierre, or let's say a Michael Jordan, and then you're working against an MMA fighter that nobody remembers from 10, 12 years ago, and a basketball player that nobody remembers from the 80s. You had them both on the table. Both are in the NBA. What would you say? Like, do you see anything on their body physically? Is it that their muscles are fast twitch muscle? Is it that their calves are a little bit bigger? Is it that when they're talking to you, their mental game is better? Have you worked with enough athletes to say, I can tell that guy is special in his ability because of these characteristics physically? What is it like? You got Jordan on your table. What would you see on him that's like, wow, this guy is a specimen? Do you see anything that physically that stands out to you?
It's actually really funny that you mentioned that, because for the past year and a half, 2 years, I've been focusing solely on one thing that links all athletes, all elite level athletes, I should say, regardless of body type, regardless of type of position that you play. When you look at the elite of the elite athletes, the one thing that you'll notice in common is their feet. Their feet all look almost the same. And if you showed a normal person their feet, you'd be like, that's kind of an ugly foot.
Yeah.
But when you look at the specific muscles and the specific tension that's generated, their movements, they're so good because their movements are so repeatable, right? If you have Steph Curry, his shot is so repeatable that he shoots at such a high level, and that's why he's the best. That comes from his feet. Same thing with LeBron. He's so explosive because he's so big, but all of his movements are so repeatable. So you can practice things over and over and over, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be good. When you practice and you train your feet, or your trainer and your feet are intrinsically built this way, that's the biggest link that I've seen. Obviously the competitive advantage, the size, the mental space that you're in, your understanding of the game plays a huge role. The biggest thing, if you showed me a player and you showed me a picture of one person's foot versus the other person's foot, I could tell you which one was the better athlete.
That's crazy.
With probably 80 to 90% accuracy.
Well, how do I train my foot? Do I do foot exercise, or is it something genetically that it's a better foot?
There's some things that are genetically, it's a better foot. And that's where you get the people that are the elite of the elite from a young age, right? Their feet stayed that way, but you can definitely train it. And that's a lot of what I do. Because some of these athletes, they'll have had this foot pattern that's incredible, and then they have an injury, and then their foot no longer works how it used to, and so we have to go retrain their feet. And so I've worked with tons and tons of these athletes that we have to retrain their feet to go back to where they were. Now the thing that I've noticed is I do the same treatment with my professional athletes as I do with my normal, regular, everyday soccer moms, right? And the one thing that differentiates them is how quickly they can progress. I've had people that come in and they're like, my knee hurts, whatever. And we figure out that this is the treatment they need. We need to train their feet. And it takes them a month to 2 months to get to a certain level. The NFL athletes takes 2 minutes before they're there. Right. And so that's the difference. Their body already has it intrinsically ingrained in them. You just need to get it out and train it to be even stronger, train it, the fascial connection to be even better. So it's definitely something that you can train as you get older, as you've been wearing the wrong shoes, as you've been training, whatever it is, your foot is going to lose that. And so it takes longer to get it back. These elite athletes, they already have it. It's almost instant as soon as you teach them how to do it.
That's interesting. So what's next for you, Mike? What are your next steps? Are you looking to train, what is the next goal for you? You're working with professional athletes. I think it sounds like you're doing what you love. What are your personal goals, not only with physical therapy and everything you're doing, but for you, where do you want to go?
I mean, the thing is you have all these places that are known throughout the country, right? Arasti or Athletico or PTI or whatever it is. You have all these places that are known throughout the country, and they're all fine, but that's all they are, is just fine, right? They're good post-surgery. They're good if you're in chronic pain, but they're not going to get, it's not protocolized enough. They're not going to get these athletes better faster, right? It's just kind of for post-surgery, for geriatrics, that sort of thing. And so I would love to have clinics across the country where I train doctors to work with athletes specifically, because if you can work with an elite athlete, you can work with everyone else. Their body is such a fine-tuned machine that if you can figure out how to work with them, how to tweak and make them better and heal them faster, then you can work with pretty much everybody. All the other stuff is easy to deal with. So what I want to do is have clinics across the country where people can go in and know exactly what they're going to get, know that they're going to get elite of the elite sports performance recovery, the elite of the elite injury recovery, rehab stuff. And so that's way down the road. I'm hiring my first employee this upcoming January. We'll be bringing her on. So I'll have a second doc here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I want to be able to train docs. I want to be able to send docs out and do the things that I'm doing so that more people can be helped, right? It's not about me. It's not about my brand. It's about, can we have something that's across the country? Everybody knows that if you go to the rehab lab, you're getting the best of the best care. You're getting the best of the best docs, and you know exactly what type of treatment you're going to get all across the country. So there's no question marks. Because if I said, hey, you're injured, who are you going to go see right now? You'd say, I don't know, maybe I go see a physical therapist. Maybe I go get adjusted from a chiropractor, but you don't really have a plan. If there's a place that you know offers the best care and it's known countrywide, right, you're going to go there 9 times out of 10. And so that's kind of what I want, is use my brand that I'm building up to help more people. And if I can train other docs, I'm limited by my own time. If I can train other doctors to do what I'm doing, then imagine how many more people can be helped. Imagine how many more professional athletes and how many more normal weekend warriors can be helped, you know?
Last question here, and we'll end this off here. Fantasy football. Are any of these, do they ever talk to you about how frustrated they get when the armchair quarterback messages them on DM? Do any players, has anyone been vocal about this?
A little bit. It really depends on the player, because some guys are like, yeah, I got all these random people in my DMs, and like, I don't care. It's not in my control if I'm getting the ball or if we have game plan or whatever. And then some people really care about their fantasy owners. So like Tariq Cohen, I've never worked with him, but you see him, he's apologizing to his, he's like, I wish I was there for my everyone that drafted me in fantasy football. Austin Eckler, every time he posts his rehab stuff, he's posting, for everyone that drafted me in fantasy football, we're almost ready, like that sort of thing. And so, so you have some guys that care a lot and are like, yeah, I really want to, this is the sort of player that I want to be. I want to be a people's player. I want to be the fantasy gamers
champ. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be the people's champ. And then other people that are like, I don't care. This is just my job. Like, I don't go critiquing your job. I don't go asking you about your job. Like, just stay out of my DM. So it really varies based on their personality.
Yeah, I kind of lash out on the guys that talk bad about fantasy. I've been sticking up for the fantasy community. Most recently, who was it? I think it was Micheal Hardman, Alexander Madison, and then Chris Carson I went at. And Chris Carson didn't reply back, but Madison did. Micheal Hardman did. Leonard Fournette a year or so ago did. A bunch of these guys get upset when I speak the truth about this stuff. But I think they should care about fantasy because, again, it is fans watching them. A lot of people don't know these players exist, nor would they watch them because they don't follow that team. Like, why would I watch, let's say, Tariq Cohen? Well, he's injured this year, but why would I watch the Bears players at all? I wouldn't care about guys like David Montgomery if, for example, if they weren't on my fantasy team. So I think it really opens every player up in their brand, across the board, where I just wouldn't just be watching a Colts game now. I'd be watching these other guys because they're on my fantasy team. So I don't know. I think everything is growing. I think, as the new generations come on, it's going to be more acceptable, I think, fantasy football. So I was just curious if you had any complaints from any of the people that you talk to on a daily basis.
Yeah, a lot of it is some of it's fantasy football, some of it's like I just don't care about it, and then some of it's like just your average fan that, like, I mean, how many DMs do you think these guys get daily from their fans? Like, hey, I love you so much, like, whatever, like, you're my favorite player, or DMs from their fantasy owners like, hey, I need you to score XYZ, or I can't believe you didn't do this, you're trash, like that sort of stuff. And I'm sure sometimes it bothers them. And then after it happens enough, you're like, well, like, it's just one more person saying that.
Yeah. You just kind of get desensitized to it. And I get that a lot. I'm the counselor, right? And I get a lot of DMs. I can't even imagine how some of these top guys are probably getting a lot of DMs. All right, man, Mike, thanks a lot. So are you changing your name to Dr. Rish, or what's going on?
We'll see. I kind of have this thing going right now. I might change it at some point, but I'm going to keep it for right now, because if you search Dr. Risher, I should be one of the first ones that shows up. And we're going to keep it as is for right now. Dr.
Risher, Risher on Instagram. And you have a podcast or anything like that right now?
I do not right now. I'm going to work on my YouTube channel here soon, and we'll have an app at some point. There's a lot of things in the making. I'm just very limited on time right now, so you got to kind of check things off one thing at a time. So right now it's just traveling, working with the pro guys, building up the clinic in Chicago, and then down the road, as I hire more people, as I kind of want to move into other things, I'll probably add a podcast or ramp up the YouTube channel, that sort of thing.
All right, Mike, we appreciate you coming on, man. Means a lot to us. Make sure you guys smash thumbs up, subscribe, and Dr. Rish, man, thanks for being on. Very good insight from the back end and getting all that inside information from some of the players that you work with. Very interesting.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always a blast hopping on with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Doc. We'll talk soon. Thanks, guys. We're out.